Have you ever sent this, like, incredibly important email?
Oh, I already know where this is going.
Right. You talk about it extensively in an all-hands meeting. You finally hit send on that big wrap-up memo, and you think to yourself, great, everyone is finally on the same page.
Mission accomplished, right?
Exactly. Only to find out, like, weeks later, that the front line of your organization is totally hopelessly confused.
Yeah, it is a completely universal experience. I mean, you do everything by the corporate playbook. You check every single communication
You've
box,
got the bold fonts, the bullet points.
all of it. And the
Yeah.
message still somehow just crashes and burns.
Yeah, you're sitting there looking at your outbox thinking, I know I sent it. Like, the words were perfectly clear. But we've got a fascinating new article today from the Phoenix Performance Partners.
It's a great piece.
It really is. It's titled, Your Message is Only as Good as Its Last Relay. And it suggests that we are just diagnosing this failure entirely wrong. Like, the problem was likely never the message itself.
No, it almost never is. It's the relay system carrying it.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive is to really uncover why we already told them almost never actually means they got it. And, how you can design an information flow that actually engages people instead of just completely overwhelming them.
And to really understand where that breakdown happens, we first have to stop treating human beings like email servers.
Say more about that, because that's a really interesting way to frame it.
Well, think about it. When a server passes along an email, the binary con remains absolutely identical, right?
Yeah, it's just raw data.
Exactly. The server doesn't have an opinion on the memo. It doesn't get anxious about the new corporate strategy. It doesn't wonder if it's going to be laid off. It just routes it.
It just does its job.
Right.
Which actually brings to mind this famous quote from Peter Drucker that they dropped right at the beginning of the source material. He said, "The most important thing in communication is hearing what isn't said."
That is such a crucial concept here.
Right. Because a message in an organization is not a static object. It's not like a baton being cleanly handed off in a relay race.
No, not at all.
It's something that gets passed layer by layer through actual human beings. And that completely changes its chemical makeup as it moves.
It does. The factual instructions, right, the what of a message, that might make it to the front line totally intact.
Like the data new software launches or whatever.
Exactly. But the why, the reasoning, the context, the underlying logic that often just evaporates somewhere around the second floor.
Just poof, gone.
Right. So by the time the directive actually hits the people executing the work, it has devolved into either just annoying noise or, honestly, outright nervousness.
Okay, let me push back on this slightly just to play devil's advocate, because I think a lot of managers listening might be thinking, if the written instructions in the email are perfectly clear, why does the emotional context or the vibe even matter?
I hear that all the time.
Right. Like, if the CEO says, we're switching to this new software platform on Tuesday, shouldn't the frontline worker just switch to the software, regardless of how the message feels? Isn't it just a manager's job to execute the play that was called?
Look, it's a fair question, but it's the exact trap that treats organizations like machines instead of human ecosystems.
Okay, unpack that ecosystem idea.
If we look at the psychology of group dynamics, a communication cascade carries the emotional tone of every single person who passes it along. We are humans. We are evolutionarily wired to be deeply attuned to nonverbal cues.
We're looking for threats, basically.
Exactly. We are looking for emotional resonance from our tribal leaders.
So people are reading the room, not just reading the memo.
Yes. Let's picture a totally normal scenario. A middle manager is tasked with passing down that new software policy you mentioned.
Okay.
But privately, that manager doesn't believe the new software will work. Or maybe they just don't understand it well enough to confidently defend it against the inevitable complaints from their team.
Which happens constantly.
Constantly.
Yeah.
So when they hold the team meeting to announce the change, their team doesn't just absorb the slide deck, they absorb the manager's hesitation.
It's like when a manager leans on the desk, gives that heavy sigh, and says, well, corporate wants us to use this new platform now.
Oh, that sigh. That sigh is louder than a 10-page FAQ document.
It really is.
The team absorbs the lack of buy-in far more than they absorb the technical instructions. A cascade simply cannot carry a belief that the relayer doesn't possess.
That's a great way to put it. You can't fake the belief.
You really can't. If the middle manager is anxious, that anxiety bleeds into the front line. If the manager is confused, the front line becomes completely paralyzed.
So the idea could be brilliant, like the software could be objectively better,
It could be a game changer.
but the emotional relay killed the adoption before anyone even logged in.
Exactly.
So if human beings act as these emotional sponges absorbing the hesitation of their bosses over the actual content, it really explains why leaders get this so wrong when they try to push changes through.
They think they are fighting a logic battle, but they're actually fighting an emotional cascade.
Wow, yeah. And the source material highlights that when the pressure is on, leaders usually fall into two major behavioral traps, right?
Yes, two big ones. The first trap is just sheer overwhelm.
The fire hose method.
Right. Leaders mistakenly equate the act of sending with the reality of landing. They assume that providing, a 50-page document covering every possible contingency guarantees understanding.
But from the receiver's perspective, flooding the system with that much granular detail just causes the human brain to shut down.
It's pure cognitive overload.
Yeah, you can't find the signal because there's way too much noise. Like, no one is reading page 47 of that PDF.
Nobody. Not a single person. Then you have the second trap, which is the loss of emotional integrity.
What does that look like in practice?
This happens when leaders equip their middle managers with these beautifully polished corporate talking points, but they entirely fail to build genuine understanding.
So the managers have a script, but zero conviction behind the script.
Exactly.
It creates what basically looks like a hostage video.
Yes, that is the perfect analogy.
The manager is standing there reading the bullet points, but their body language is screaming, "I am being forced to say this against my will."
Right, and the emotional integrity of the original vision is just completely stripped away by the time it reaches the bottom of the org chart.
Which leads to a really crucial realization from the Phoenix Performance Partners piece. Leaders don't create these hostage videos or flood their teams with 50-page documents out of intentional sabotage.
No, no one wakes up wanting to ruin the company's communication.
Right. It's not a lack of self-awareness so much as they warp the message because of their own unconscious psychological defaults.
We all have them. We all have these built-in filters for how we handle stress and how we communicate when we feel vulnerable or pressured.
This concept of unconscious filters is so fascinating. It instantly made me think of Instagram, actually.
Oh, how so?
Well, you think you're sending a raw, clear, objective picture to your team. You genuinely believe you are communicating reality. But unconsciously, just to manage your own anxiety about the change, you apply a filter that completely distorts the image for the person looking at it.
That is a brilliant way to look at it. Let's actually examine how those specific filters operate in the workplace, because there are four main ones the article points out.
Okay, what's the first one?
Some leaders manage the anxiety of a big change by leaning heavily into control.
The take charge type.
Right. This is the top-down broadcaster who delivers the decision with absolute finality and leaves zero room for questions. They view any pushback as just resistance or a waste of time.
So in the Instagram analogy, they slap a really high contrast, harsh filter on the message. Like, here are the stark facts, let's move, no time for feelings.
Exactly. And they might get immediate compliance.
Sure, out of fear.
Right. People will nod their heads and do what they are told out of fear or obligation, but they will never get true engagement.
Because the second a problem arises with that new software, the team will just drop the ball and wait for the next command.
Yep. Because they were never actually invested in the success of the project.
They were just following orders.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the completely opposite end of the spectrum, you have leaders who manage their anxiety through connection.
Yes, the connection filter. This happens a lot in cultures that pride themselves on being, quote unquote, a family.
Right. The leader wants to be liked. They want people to feel comfortable at all times.
So when they have to communicate a tough change or, say, a difficult performance metric, they soften the message.
They over-explain and pad the bad news with so much reassurance that the actual signal is completely buried.
You've seen it happen.
Oh, absolutely. This is where my Instagram analogy really clicks for me.
Yeah.
It's like applying a soft focus blur over the picture.
Yes.
Or it's like the classic compliment sandwich. But the bread is so incredibly thick and the meat is so thin you don't even realize you just ate a critique.
And then the team walks away thinking everything is totally fine.
And the leader is incredibly frustrated a month later when no behavior has actually changed.
Because the message was blurred out of existence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the third filter?
A close cousin to that connection filter is the harmony filter.
How is harmony different from connection?
Well, while connection is about being liked, Harmony is strictly about avoiding conflict. A leader operating through this default will just quietly edit out the hard parts of a message as they relay it down the chain.
Ah, so they omit the difficult realities because they don't want to deal with the messy emotional fallout in the meeting.
Exactly. They just avoid the explosion altogether.
So they basically crop the photo to remove anything ugly. The front line ends up operating on a sanitized, entirely incomplete version of reality.
Which is incredibly dangerous for a business.
Totally. All right, and the last filter.
Finally, you have leaders who are terrified of being blamed for not communicating enough. They manage that fear through the accuracy filter.
The accuracy filter. That sounds like a good thing, though.
You'd think so. But they want to ensure no one can ever say they weren't informed, so they load every single layer of the cascade with agonizing, minute detail.
Oh, I see. So it's bumping up the sharpness on the image so intensely that it actually hurts the eyes to look at it.
Yes. Which brings us right back to the overwhelm trap we talked about earlier.
Right, the 50-page PDF. Too much visual noise, leading to complete paralysis.
Exactly. And, as a listener, it is really worth pausing to consider which of those defaults you rely on.
Yeah, that's a good point.
When the pressure is on in your own work, or honestly even in your personal life, how do you unconsciously distort the picture? Do you blur it to keep the peace, or do you over-sharpen it just to cover your bases?
Because identifying your personal filter is really the first move toward transforming the culture.
It is, but awareness alone doesn't fix a broken system.
Right. You can't just know you have a harmony filter and expect the company to suddenly communicate better.
Exactly. If we want to rebuild the human relay, the source material actually provides a really solid 4-step blueprint for fixing the structural pipes of an organization's communication flow.
Okay, let's get into the blueprint. The very first phase of that involves mapping the real plumbing.
Yes. Step 1. You have to trace the actual path of information, looking at who actually hears what, from whom, and when.
So you have to draw the real relay, not what the official organizational chart says on the wall.
Because the org chart is usually a fantasy of how information should flow. The real relay is how it actually flows in practice.
Give me an example of that.
Well, the official chain might dictate that information goes from the director to the manager to the coordinator.
Nice and clean.
Right. But in reality, the coordinator might hear everything first because they ride the train with the director's assistant.
Oh, I see.
You have to map that reality.
Okay, I understand the theory here, but I have to push back on this a little bit.
Go for it.
Tracing the real relay instead of sticking to the org chart sounds like you're institutionalizing chaos.
Yeah.
Like if leadership validates that the coordinator finds out through the assistant on the train, aren't we just encouraging office gossip?
Not exactly.
I mean, how does the CEO even map that back channel without looking like they're, spying on who gets coffee together?
It's a valid concern, but mapping reality doesn't create the chaos. It just diagnoses the bottlenecks that are already sabotaging your initiatives.
Okay, so it's happening anyway.
Exactly. If your official chain of command is too slow, too sanitized, or if it just lacks trust, the human network will inevitably route around it to find the truth.
But doesn't acknowledging those back channels completely undermine the middle managers? Like if a manager knows leadership is mapping the rumor mill, don't they feel completely bypassed?
It actually empowers them, believe it or not.
How so?
Because the back channel usually exists because the official pipe is blocked. By mapping the real path, you aren't endorsing gossip. You are identifying exactly where your official communication pipes have sprung a leak, or maybe where a specific manager is hoarding information.
Ah, I like that analogy.
Right. You can't fix the plumbing in an old house by staring at the original architectural blueprints if the pipes were rerouted 10 years ago.
That makes so much sense. You have to open the walls and look at where the water is actually flowing.
You have to deal with reality as it is, not as you wish it was on a PowerPoint slide.
Okay, I'm sold on step 1. So once you map those actual pipes, you have to look at what you are pumping through them.
Which brings us to step 2 of the blueprint. The why must travel inextricably with the what.
At every single layer of the cascade, the underlying reasoning has to accompany the instruction. Why are we doing this software change? Why right now? Why in this specific way?
Because if the relayer only has the what, they are just a parrot repeating a script.
And parrots aren't great at answering follow-up questions. Right. If a team member asks a nuanced question the parrot wasn't programmed to answer, the whole system breaks.
The relayer panics, they get defensive, or they just deflect blame upward, saying, look, I don't know, this is just what upper management wants.
Which destroys trust.
Completely. But a manager who profoundly understands the why can answer those unanticipated questions. They can adapt the core message to the specific daily realities of their team's workflow without losing the original intent of the change.
But understanding the why isn't just an intellectual exercise, is it?
No, it's a deeply emotional one.
Which leads to step 3. And this is perhaps the most neglected concept in modern corporate communication. Equipping relayers emotionally, not just verbally.
This is huge. We love handing managers FAQs, slide decks, and bullet points. We equip them with data, but we completely ignore their humanity.
Right. Before a manager is asked to pass a significant disruptive message onto their team, they have to be given time to process their own reaction to it.
This goes right back to what we established earlier. A cascade cannot carry a belief the source doesn't have.
You can't fake the vibe.
You really can't. It's like trying to sell a car you wouldn't drive yourself. If you want the manager to project confidence and inspire the front line to adopt this new software, the manager has to actually feel confident.
So how do you build that confidence?
They need a safe space to express their own doubts to their superiors. They need time to work through their own resistance, ask the quote-unquote stupid questions, and reach genuine conviction.
In many ways, leadership needs to allow middle managers to go through the grief cycle of losing the old way of doing things, right?
Yes, you have to let them grieve the old software before demanding they become cheerleaders for the new way.
You have to let managers be receivers first before you demand they act as broadcasters.
That is perfectly said. And that concept of broadcasting brings us to the final requirement for a healthy communication system. Step 4.
The cascade must be built as a two-way street.
Exactly. If information only travels downward, it's not a communication system, it's a megaphone.
Yeah, and no one likes being yelled at through a megaphone.
Nobody. For genuine engagement to happen, questions, pushback, and reactions must travel up the chain just as reliably and just as safely as decisions travel down.
So if the frontline workers, the people actually using the new software, point out a massive flaw in how it integrates with their daily tasks,
That feedback needs a clear, unblocked pipe to travel all the way back up to the executive who signed the contract in the first place.
and if that feedback hits a middle manager who is operating with a harmony filter,
Oh, the person who doesn't want to upset the boss with bad news.
right, then the pipe gets capped off. The feedback literally dies on the second floor.
And what happens? The executives assume the rollout was a huge success, while the front line is left struggling with a completely broken system.
Because a cascade that only flows in one direction is a dictatorship, not a conversation.
And a workforce that is only ever talked at will eventually just comply with the minimum requirements, or, honestly, they will just quit.
They will never bring their full creative energy to the mission of the organization.
Never.
So, by tracing the real path of information, ensuring the context travels with the instructions, giving managers the space to emotionally process change, and building a safe upward flow for feedback, information stops being a burden.
It stops overwhelming people and starts actually including them in the process. It brings them into the fold.
The overarching takeaway from the Phoenix Performance Partners piece is incredibly empowering for anyone leading a team, I think.
It really is. It suggests that if your initiatives are failing to take root, it's not because your team is inherently stubborn or your ideas are just flawed.
You just need to address the organizational plumbing.
Exactly. Check the pipes.
To put this into practice, the source material offers a really practical weekly challenge for you.
Highly recommend trying this.
Pick one important message or initiative you need to communicate this week. Take a piece of paper and map its real cascade.
Look at every layer, every human relay it has to pass through.
And then intentionally improve just one link in that chain. Like maybe you sit down and thoroughly explain the why to one specific manager.
Or maybe you explicitly ask for pushback during a meeting to help build that upward flow we talked about.
Yeah, just fix one link.
And as you consider how information flows or fails to flow through your own organization, there is one final implication of the human relay I really want you to mull over.
Let's hear it.
If a communication cascade truly carries the emotional tone of every person who relays it, think about what silence in your organization actually means.
Wow. Silence isn't just an absence of noise.
No, it's not. If you are a leader and you aren't receiving any pushback, if no tough questions are flowing up the chain to your desk, what emotions are your middle managers feeling that they are too afraid to relay back to you?
Are they feeling fear, apathy, resignation?
Exactly. Is your personal desire for harmony working so incredibly well that you've accidentally built an airtight echo chamber?
where the only thing you ever hear is the sound of your own good intentions.
That is a chilling but entirely necessary question to ask yourself.
It really is.
Hmm.
If you're looking at your outbox, wondering why that brilliantly written email didn't change the world, maybe it's time to stop looking at the screen and start looking at the human relay standing right in front of you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Go map your cascade, check your filters, and we'll catch you next time.